Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to yet another CRM Convo. This one we'll be discussing the impact of programmatic advertising with our guest, Diego Prado. Diego is what you could probably call a Swiss Army knife built by Caterpillar. He's done all sorts of jobs, and we'll get some information on that from him in a second. He's a pragmatic executive who thrives while developing high-performing teams that drive impact. If you want a holistic approach that actually moves the needle and fosters growth without sacrificing culture, he will tailor it for you. He is the founder of Cuttlefish Incorporated, a business consulting firm, advisor to companies redefining the future of experiential technology. But that was a canned introduction, and it was always better to get it from the horse's mouth himself. So, Diego, welcome. Tell us a little about yourself.
Welcome.
Thank you, Marshall, and thank you, Thomas. It's a pleasure being here and being a part of the conversation. It's really nice to see what you guys are doing and keeping it real and making real conversations that matter. And so I appreciate your time and appreciate being here. A little bit about me. I'm kind of an unconventional person in the world of marketing, digital, and technology. I'm not a technology expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I've had the luxury to be in the room and learn a lot from really amazing technology people. And so I think my career spans now a little bit longer than I like to admit, but I've been working for a long time. And I started out in the airlines because I studied hospitality and ended up in a marketing class where the professor said, "Hey, your brain's not normal. We want to work with you." And they customized my degree plan to specialize in revenue management, which in the airlines have been using algorithms, since 1985 to do pricing and strategic, inventory management controls and stuff like that. So very early in my career, we were working with algorithms, even though I didn't understand how they actually worked. And as I said earlier, I know enough about technology to be dangerous, but not enough to get out of any trouble that I get myself in. So I've had to depend heavily on the technology teams to help, fix the things that I broke. And that built a lot of really cool relationships. But I went from the airlines to the car rental industry and heavy equipment rental industry with Hertz from Continental United. And then I went to, I was poached into IMG. And IMG is the juggernaut in sports globally. And they brought me in to bring pricing and revenue management strategy into the sport, media, and entertainment sector. 4 years into that, I was brought over to LA to work for Endeavor, who had bought IMG, and the rest is history. So this is the head of revenue management for the entire portfolio under Endeavor Events, from 2014 to 2020. And so there I got to firsthand witness what it takes to build some of these world's extraordinary experiences, like Wimbledon hospitality or Lollapalooza or the Australian. In Australia, we had a very cool event amongst all the Australian events that were very cool that we had, which was a culinary festival where we brought 50 of the world's top chefs to do collaboration dinners in remote places in Australia. And to get there, it was 3 days going, 3 days coming back. And so you can imagine the burden on technology to try to make that be online as well. And so I've done very little by comparison to the really magical people I've gotten to work with that have done a lot more. And it was just my job to help it all make more money and to do it in a way that was not intrusive to the consumer. So how did we collect data on site to measure an on-site experience or to do evaluation of how many eyeballs were looking at a particular signage in a stadium, et cetera, without the customer really feeling like we were there with them, right? They got to enjoy their experience by themselves. And so the science of experiential and bringing AI and technology and monitoring and doing all that without the customer feeling like they're being watched by Big Brother, even though arguably they are. But all of that to say, how do you curate a consumer experience that's exceptional with data so that you can answer the question of how are we doing and is it making money? The technology exists today. We just have to choose to use it. So that's, I guess, a long-winded intro of who I am.
That's a good one. I mean, I've got a sense of you now. But for our listeners or viewers, I guess I should call them, we do have cameras on and everything. What or how would you define programmatic advertising? What are we talking about today?
So programmatic is, to me, the derivative of a very great idea in how do you reach more people in a segmented way that resonates to them a little bit more uniquely so that they have a higher propensity to click on the ad, and we can do it at scale and reach millions of people, but we don't genuinely know who they are because we're doing it through cookies and we're guessing that we've got it right. That's programmatic to me. Very robotic. Even though there's geniuses that I can't even shake a stick at, I can probably name some if you want to talk to them, that do that type of work. But to me, it's a computer trying to put people in buckets and feed them content in a way that they can justify to a company why they're being charged in order to serve that ad. And so that's what I mean. But that's what programmatic means to me is, we're serving ad content, we're charging for it, and we're doing it at scale in a way that humans effectively wouldn't be able to do it manually. And so
You just said it's the derivative of a great idea. So far, I'm a bit a cynic when it comes to advertising. I didn't hear the great idea.
well, it's the great idea part of it is how do you reach more people? So from a corporate perspective is, hey, I'm a brand, I want to grow. How do I get to more people and give a personalized experience to those people? So the idea is that programmatic can arguably help you curate a little bit more unique experience for different types of customers because you'd created different types of content, and therefore those different types of ads are being automatically served to the people that profile correctly, into the buckets that they've been put in. And maybe that's a little bit of, that wasn't the original intent of programmatic. That's 2 or 3 steps in when somebody figured out, hey, if we define enough about these 2 different types of customers, we can attack them differently.
What then was the original idea or the original intent?
Say that again?
What then was the original intent or purpose?
I wasn't in the room, but I think that to the original intent for me, from my perspective, if I reverse engineer kind of the what programmatic is for is to reach more people, right? It's how do you serve the ads to the right person at the right time? And so was it originally hey, we can charge for this? I don't know, probably. But it's just, to me, it becomes that's where the good idea kind of starts to distort to me, right? It's anything that you can do through automation is probably a good idea. If you've and we did this in the airlines a lot, hey, I'm doing the same thing to these 10,000 flights every day. Why don't we just write an algorithm to do it for us? Sure, fine, we did that. And so the problem with the algorithm is that if no one's monitoring the data that's being fed into it, something happens. And so if the computer was doing a year-over-year lineup that was adjusted by day of week and Easter shifted and nobody told the computer Easter shifted, you were forecasting demand for the wrong time of year. And so, to me, programmatic has the same, or I guess to finish that story is, eventually you have a spiral, either a spiral down or the algorithm stalls going up in one direction because it doesn't know how to take context into account. And so if you let it ride by itself forever, it eventually implodes. Programmatic to me has had the same effect. It was great technology, maybe, if we want to be, nice. It was a great capability that evolved into something that outgrew its own skin. It got too big. Now it's the juggernauts doing programmatic and serving ads. But the reality is, how do I know it's broken? I'm not technical enough to know that aspect of why it doesn't work, but I can tell you that it doesn't work. Because I've continuously get ads for things I already bought, and so
exactly,
what's the point? And so then, as a businessman purchasing ads online, I know that I'm selling ads to the people that I already bought. Then why am I purchasing ads for the product I already bought, or they already bought from me? Then I'm just wasting money. Now, is Google volunteering that information to you? Is Louis Vuitton syncing their point of sale system with their email campaign on, I'm assuming, Adobe or one of the big ones, right? Probably not. And so we're missing the boat on data connectivity and analytics, which is, at least in the sport media and entertainment industry where I've been for the last 12 years, we have a technical debt that's 30 years old. And so if you're not investing in that, then I know for a fact we're not doing that connectivity. And so how do you, as an enterprise, use programmatic confidently only because digital gives you data better than anything else? Like, to me, word of mouth is still king. This is a great example. I'll get phone calls from having conversations with you guys because we opened our mouths and we talked about it and somebody liked something we said. Probably a lot more effectively than me paying Google for ads to all the people that are getting bombarded with ads from everyone else who are writing canned emails that are going out to everybody and their mom. And everyone's ignoring because we're all ignoring them, right? And so to a degree, even, I've got friends whose companies send me personalized emails. It's like, I know that's not my friend writing me, right? Because he would have texted me or she would have texted me. They wouldn't have sent me an email. So don't personalize it, right? Just say, hey, this is to all of our customers collectively together. It's more genuine. Not, hey, Diego, look at this thing that everybody else is getting.
Yeah.
And
hey,
so
buddy, don't you want the new shiny thing?
Right, exactly. And so we've got this proclivity of too much of a good thing is not a good thing anymore, right? And so programmatic, to a degree, does something very effectively. And if you keep the reins pulled back on it, it's a really, really effective tool to scale and deliver a message to a lot of people in a certain way. And if you use it that way, it's very effective. But the same thing with AI drafting an email for me and sending it out that doesn't sound anything like me. People are like, when'd you learn to write?
Who holds the reins?
And so
you just said something like the reins need to be pulled back, which is probably right, but who holds them after all? I mean,
I think at the end of the day, we collectively as enterprise hold the reins, full stop. And so, like, Levi's holds the reins for Levi's. And if Levi's wants to bet on the new technology and go after it and go do it, they have to decide how much they want to go, right? It's like in the agency world with which I've worked, right? It's the agency of record versus I'm going to let my marketing team do it, or I'm going to have a marketing team that manages 15 different agencies, and depending on which one's having, better luck, we let we throttle one or throttle the other. And so at the end of the day, it's the people that own the marketing spend that hold the reins or control the throttle. And I think as a marketing discipline, we've been erroneously betting down or doubling down would be the right term. We've been doubling down on digital just because it's easy to file a report that says we spent this much, we made this much. Great, go do it. Can we do more? It's easier to get that marketing spend justified. It's less of a fight when you're pushing it up to the CFO that doesn't want to spend any more money. And so that's the battle of how do you prioritize your marketing spend across brand and digital and experiential and this and that. CX, to me is a very cool evolution of what marketing should be, right? It's a one-to-one conversation with the consumer. It used to be just surveys. Now it's integrated into the digital atmosphere. You can do pop-up questions, send text messages, do forums, whatever, to where the customer can openly tell you, it's like, hey, this is why I like your product. This is why I don't like your product. This part of the consumer experience sucked. This was great. It changed my life. Are we listening to them is the question. Are we listening to them enough? And so there's a lot of tools out there that I think are poised to revolutionize how marketing is done. The technology exists, maybe not all of it in the same place. And so it's going to take some stitching together or tethering, some collaboration across different companies so that we can build it faster. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the marketing team wanting to spend the money and where. And they hold the rein. And so once somebody that understands the capabilities of these other technologies gets their eyes on them with enough money, they buy them. And so there's two types of big companies, right? There's the companies out there that buy a small company that's doing something better than them, and then they shelf them because, well, they've already built the big machine that they need to feed. And if we let this other company keep growing, they're going to take our market share. And so rather than bringing them in and truly,
integrating
them or even scuttling their old project and saying, this is better, we're just going to bet on this, right? We have, and I say it because I've seen it, I won't call out any names, but, it's great companies that I was working with that were doing this really amazing thing that would get bought and then they would stop evolving. They would do the thing that they were doing, but they wouldn't stop getting the investment or the curiosity or being cutting edge because, yeah, you're doing the same great thing that you were doing 10 years ago, but you're doing it the way we were doing it 10 years ago. New technology exists. And so it's it's not in anyone's best interest at a giant company to say, hey, we just found our competition that's doing it better than us. Right. And so we've got this juxtaposition, I don't know if that's the right word, or kind of catch-22 of really big companies with all the power and the money to go buy these new technologies that are popping up, and the small companies trying to make it happen without selling their soul to the devil, right? And selling to those big companies that they know that they'll never evolve again. And there's a couple of them that are doing really good jobs. And so probably more than a couple, I'm not being generous enough, but I work very closely with Question Pro in a lot of regards. I'm an advisor for Question Pro across CX in the sport, media, and entertainment vertical. Why do I partner with Question Pro? And I'm not getting paid for this plug, by the way.
No, that we didn't want to name some companies. We already are at name 2. The other one was Google, yeah.
Yeah, Google wasn't paying me either. They're probably mad at me.
Google is less a company than it is a force of nature at this point.
Exactly, but it's to their own detriment, I think,
Yeah.
right? To their own detriment, because you got such a big machine. How do like it's steering the Titanic? So, but to finish my plug to Question Pro, the they buy companies and let them keep doing what they were doing, right? It's not a threat to them. It's how do we make the consumer experience better? And it's a completely different experience working with people like that. And so it's an honor for me to be able to say I work with Question Pro. It's an honor for me to be even included into that team, if you will. They're doing really amazing things, and it's a luxury for me to be able to sit at the same table and give my crazy opinion, and maybe somebody will listen. But at the end of the day, it's because I'm aligning with people that are building the future of the consumer experience. We don't settle for, well, this is the way we've always done it, right? And so, or this is the way that we're making a ton of money today, because it won't be the way we're making a ton of money tomorrow, right? Amazon, here's another plug, not paying me. Amazon's not doing anything today that Sears Roebuck wasn't doing 100 years ago. They just use the technology that's available today. I could order a house. Oh, I couldn't because I wasn't alive then. But somebody's great grandfather or grandfather could have ordered a house that would have arrived on an 18-wheeler and been unloaded in their yard, and they could have built it themselves. You can do the same thing today on Amazon. Like you can buy a modular home. It's the same exact thing. They're not doing anything different other than evolving with the technology and expanding into every vertical or every horizontal aspect that they can. And they're doing an incredible job about it. And so now they've got complete vertical integration, 3D integration across everything, and they're shooting people into space. Great. Do they ever as a company change their culture to the point that they say, we're done? That new thing that's coming down the pike that we heard people talking about on this, CRMKonvo's blog, and say, we don't really care. I think we've done enough. We'll let someone else take that flag. No, somebody at Amazon will listen to a conversation like ours and say, what the hell are these guys talking about? Let's go talk to them. Let's go figure out what they're seeing that we're not seeing. And then somebody will say, yeah, we want to build that with you, right? And so Click's a great data visualization tool. Years ago, they bought Big Squid. It was machine learning, democratized, easier to use than any time before. And so there's companies that make big bets on new ideas. And there's companies that buy good ideas so that they don't outshine them. And
so now let's circle a little back. So on one hand, you are saying the system is broken, or programmatic advertising is broken. On the other hand, the ones who hold these strings to the wallets or the purses open them up very willingly. So this indicates that it's working for them.
It's working for them.
I mean, they are rational, I hope. And if they are rational, they spend the money only because they see a return.
Yes, and that's a great point. It's not that programmatic is broken to the extent that it's going to lose you money. But I look at the world from a different perspective, because from a revenue optimization perspective, not all revenue is good, because other revenue could be making you more money to the bottom line. And so, sure, I can sell out the back of the plane, and I can oversell the back of the plane so that it'll fill up the front of the plane. But if I sell my front cabin seat for too little and someone else would have shown up and paid me triple, I left money on the table. So when you look at the world from the perspective of how much more could I have done, then we all suck. Because from a programmatic perspective, serving the wrong ad to the right customer at the right time through the right channel is throwing money out the door, because now I'm paying you. I'm paying you to serve an ad that's not going to work. Worse than that, you've served the same fucking ad 20 times and it hasn't worked. Why do you keep charging me? Tell me to serve a different ad.
Yeah, and on the customer side, they're getting pissed because they don't want to see that same ad 20 times, especially if they've already bought.
And so let's take it all the way to TV, right? It's not just programmatic, it's all broken. And so I'm watching a TV series. That new ad for Old Spice was cool the first time I saw it in the series of television that I'm watching. It's old by the fourth commercial break. So write a better story, or at least a longer one, and just give it to me in snippets. But stop telling me the same thing over and over again every commercial break, because it sucks. You're ruining my experience, and that's why I put it on mute. I saw the commercial the first time. I might have even watched it the second time to see if I caught something that I didn't catch the first round. But by the third or fourth time, I'm putting you on mute and I'm answering my emails. And so companies are spending money for the sake of spending it. And so then back to your question about, well, that you have to hope that at least it's still working. I would say this. One, humanity is tragically predictable. If you work on the number side of marketing, you understand that it doesn't matter what color you are, what race you are, what religion you are, we're all pretty much the same. And so we behave very, very similarly. And so the distinction between why you serve an ad one way or another is very seldom down to that level of granularity. You create consumer profiles based on what type of behavior to understand that they actually are buying because you served a really, really good ad. Or are we just spending marketing however we want to, and we're successful in spite of ourselves? I know plenty of companies that are successful in spite of the people who run them. And so there's an interesting dynamic in the world of programmatic, but I think that extends far beyond that across marketing altogether. Because if you have a really, really great brand team and a really, really strong brand, you have the luxury of screwing up a lot, because word of mouth is still king. And so when you ultimately deliver the consumer experience that gets people excited talking about it, it doesn't really matter how much you screw up on digital, you're still going to make money. But all the attribution is being given to digital because it's easy, right? And so I think as Peter Drucker said, you can't manage what you can't measure, right? Well, it's really, really difficult to measure anything. Well, it's really, really difficult to measure things accurately. And so when you do numbers, when you do statistics, when you do anything, you can slice and dice the numbers to get it to kind of say that you aren't a complete dumbass 90% of the time. And so that's what happens, right? You hire an analytics guy that can come in, do some great, cool visualizations and say, let's focus here on what is working. Because we know, because cookies tell us that it's working. So, is it really? It's not working well by itself, I guess is my point.
So now we have sort of identified at least two problems, three actually. So one is that the advertisers are continuously serving the same Old Spice ad. So just to follow that lead, might be cool water, but anyways, but it's always the same. Yeah. So, and you're saying this is a problem. Okay, that problem can get fixed by, well, being a bit more creative. The other problem is on the side of the vendor or the ad platforms, basically, that ingest the creative companies and that are pretty intransparent about, well, the revenue that they are creating or the benefits that they are actually creating, which seems to be a bit of a harder problem. The third one is I read all sorts of studies that consumers actually like to get blasted with ads, which is totally alien to me because for me, an ad is a waste of screen real estate, basically. I don't want to see them. Marshall, you probably want to go on.
Probably. I was just saying that I want to get a look at
No,
that study.
that's fair. The last one is interesting
Yeah.
because I'm sure there are people, there's probably a subset of consumers that, one, I love to answer surveys. Said no, right? But there are people, you would think no one likes answering surveys. Well, correct. Most people don't like answering surveys. Therefore, should we do surveys? Yes, you should do surveys. You should do surveys correctly. That's kind of where CX comes from, right? Like we can ask a post-consumer experience, we're going to ask you 90 questions. And 2 years after you started your decision set that you were going to do this thing, set your mind to and do it. And we served you content because you were coming on our website, et cetera, for 2 years before you committed and said, yes, I'm going to do it. And then you registered for this competition that you were going to do that required a year's worth of training before you felt comfortable doing. And so you've trained for a year after a year of thinking about it. And now you've got a year to train. After you do it, you do the competition. And after that, we're going to serve you a 90-question survey that says, how was your registration experience? That was 2 years ago, right? That doesn't make any sense. And so CX is the application of the consumer experience distilled into ask them right after. Hey, you logged onto our website and we noticed you didn't do anything about it.
Yeah,
What's
right
wrong?
question at
Did
the
you
right
not
time.
find the information you were looking for? Or you found it and you don't like our product? Like you can't do that with everybody, but if you do it statistically significant enough, you improve your website faster than waiting until after the consumer event. There's technology out there that allows you to do this on site at an event. Have curated consumer content that can be served as soon as somebody walks up to the BMW tent at a golf tournament. And before they leave the golf tournament, they could be registered for a test drive at their local BMW dealership. BMW is doing some pretty cool stuff from an experiential perspective, right? And there's companies, so many companies spend so much energy trying to curate an authentic consumer experience. And the key to doing it is just being authentic. Like we think too much about how do we architect this authentic experience? It's like, just don't be a jerk. If somebody's excited about your product, talk to them. That's what CX is for. That's it. It's really simple. At the same time, very complex, and a lot of people get a lot of money, like get paid a ton of money to do it, but we overthink it. And so my philosophy is, how do we use technology and data and AI and all of these things to make a better consumer experience while we hide in plain sight? That's actually the entire reason for Cuttlefish. Like, why Cuttlefish? Who would ever name their company Cuttlefish Inc.? It's kitschy and stupid.
No,
Well,
it's not
the Cuttlefish,
actually.
They're the best
the
names.
Cuttlefish,
Yeah.
one, it's a joke. Two, so it's jovial. That's why I named it that. But two, the cuttlefish is the most intelligent animal on Earth. It has neurons distributed throughout its skin to the point that it can change the color and texture of its skin to blend into its surroundings. And it becomes invisible. But it's there, analyzing everything at every touch point. That's what cuttlefish stands for. And so that should be the goal of the data-centric, technology-enabled marketing expert. Hide in plain sight and let the brand team shine. And if anyone else knows you're there, you're doing it wrong.
Can't one argue that they are hiding in plain sight anyways because they are just following us? Well, ads are following us everywhere. This means that somebody is around that observes us the whole time, which, as it is the digital space, can't be really hidden.
Right. No, yeah, that's fair. They're always there, they're always watching, but what are they doing about it? I guess it's a distinction, right? And so are you serving another ad that no one's clicking on, or at least that I'm not? Or are you curating an actual consumer experience that matters? And so I think also this depends heavily on people's evolution as a consumer, right? Where are you in the stage of, you know, I want to have cool stuff because it identifies me for who I am. It helps me feel like I fit in, etc. Or I don't really give a crap about any of that stuff. I'm me, and I'm gonna wear what I want, do what I want, say what I want, and everybody else can go put something else on.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's just that I'm getting old, and ads are not working as much.
You're a youngster,
They used to, right? And so are we profiling our consumers correctly by age group? That's a good question, because I'm not on TikTok and I'm not on Instagram, mostly because I'd like to think that it's because I'm too busy, but the reality is probably that I'm just not cool enough. But are brands having an authentic experience in an age where they claim to be doing hyper personalization, where a cynic like me that actually understands how the technology works can distill without reading the entirety of the email that it's not personal at all. The robot doesn't have feelings for me. It doesn't know that I actually feel the way it thinks that I feel.
Oh,
So
that's a whole rat's nest. The
Oh, yeah.
first question that comes to mind is, does that matter? How do you know that Marshall feels for you, or I, or somebody else?
Well, because the conversation extends. We keep talking, right?
Yeah,
Friends,
well,
friends, and this is what it all comes down to. Marketing is engagement, and if you can, and that's why word of mouth wins, right? If you can keep an engaging conversation and want to have it again a week later or a month later, or 2 years after you haven't talked to your best friend from college, you say, "Hey, I should probably drop him a line," and you call them and you talk for 4 hours like you had talked last week.
Yeah.
That's true engagement. That's true commitment to a friendship. And at the end of the day, it's not that people are looking for friendship from a brand, but think of how crazy it is. And crazy might not be the wrong term. Some people might become offended, but it's crazy that people would define their own personal value or self-worth based on the brands that they wear, but they do. Right? People get excited about the new Gucci's or the new Louis Vuittons that they've got to buy because it helps them feel like they're successful. I don't know. Or do they just have a really good eye for fashion and they choose to dress better than I do? But we have this desire of self-identification with attaching things from outside or from our surroundings to help define us for who we are. And so marketing is just a beautiful dance around that, of catching someone's attention enough for them to say, I like what you're doing, I like what you stand for, and therefore I'm willing to try your product or invest my time and energy and through money in buying that from you. And so that's why companies like Chobani and companies like Patagonia right now can't do anything wrong, because they're being authentic. And so, and there's never been a more opportune moment for being able to let the consumer enjoy that authenticity if you curate the content well enough through experiential, through word, so that it boosts word of mouth. There's through CX programs, through community, through loyalty programs. There's never been better technology to execute that with than there is today. But today, we're still 10 years behind where we will be in 10 years. And so companies have to evolve. Like if you ever say, oh, we're going to sign this $3 million deal with Adobe and now we're done. So no, bro, you're just getting started. And so there's not enough education at the executive level outside of marketing to understand the Herculean effort that it is for a brand to scale and preserve authenticity. It's really, really difficult.
Well, when is it the most effective and when does it fail worst for advertisers?
Good one.
That's a really good question.
Well, it's right here on the page. So we planned for this.
I should have been.
Oh, man, don't spill the beans, Marshall.
If we're exclusively talking about programmatic,
Yeah.
I think it helps when you need to, when you've done all your legwork. The problem is too many people bet on programmatic as the end all be all. So if you've done proper consumer journey mapping and you've segmented your database and you have a CDP that actually works and you have invested the proper amount of money and resources and time with your brand team and your content team, then programmatic is great. It helps you scale, helps you reach a ton of people. But if you skip those first steps, then you're just throwing money out the window. Not all of it. Some of it is going to hit something good. But a lot of it's just lost because you're serving the wrong ad at the right time to the right customer.
Or even
It sounds like you're getting to the old cliche. Half of my advertising budget is wasted. The problem is I don't know which half.
Exactly. And so the problem is because numbers were associated with digital and attribution was associated with digital, the assumption has been that that part of the budget, we knew what we were spending it on and we knew that it was working. And I'm not arguing that it doesn't. It does work, but not all of it. And so how much of that would be better spent through on-site activation, through a charity, because it makes you look like you're not in it just for the money. Now there's companies that are genuinely are not just in it for the money and they're giving to the charity and doing a big to-do about it. But there are companies that need the good faith and should be investing more in philanthropic efforts. And so that's the where does it work right? When you've done all the other stuff, when you recognize that word of mouth is still king, when you still invest in your creative team and you don't sit on your laurels and say, oh, well, now you can do all of that stuff through ChatGPT and it's much easier to design creative work. And so we're just going to let it, we're going to get rid of all of our, creatives. If you don't do that, programmatic still becomes a very valuable tool. If you skip all that, it wasn't going to work well in the first place. It's not to say that it's, you shouldn't be spending money there, but neither here nor there. Where does it break the most? When you try to be authentic on purpose without genuinely being so. And so when as a company you try to hyper personalize the consumer experience, programmatic bites you in the ass. And so when you use a tool for something it wasn't meant to do, like leave that for CX. Don't send me a personalized email that makes it sound like it's the CEO talking to me. The CEO doesn't know I exist. One, because we ran into a conference last week, into each other at a conference last week, and he introduced himself. And so he didn't really know me. So don't send me a fucking email afterwards acting like you know me. Right?
Mm.
And so the consumer has to feel the exact same way. It's like, don't patronize me as a consumer. I'm not that stupid. And so I think that's the general feeling of a lot of people. It's like, you make good beer. Stick to that. Don't try to convince me of something you ain't. Here's another plug. Honda doesn't pay me, so this isn't a plug. But Honda should pay me. Honda is the best automotive brand in the world. The strongest story and message in the world. Because they wanted to build cars, so they went and won racing, so that the government would let them build cars. They never pretended to be something they weren't. They proved what they were, and they do it every single day. And so I don't drive a Honda other than a motorcycle, because I drive a big truck, but I bought it at a Honda dealership. Because when I walk in and I say I have a problem, they fix it. So my truck broke down a couple weeks ago, months maybe, and I walked into the place I bought it at, and I said, guys, I'm in a rush. I need you to fix my truck, and I need a loaner. I'm going to put too many miles on it for it to be worth it for you. But help me out, because I need to make it to, my wife needs to make it to a meeting. And the injectors on my General Motors diesel engine can't digest American diesel. That's another soapbox. So they said, Diego, don't worry about it. Here's your car. They pulled a car off of the lot, gave me a loaner, drove it. They had my truck, I think, for 6 weeks while they were waiting for parts from General Motors. I had to take this car in for an oil change. That's how many miles I put on it.
Wow.
Oh, not too bad, yeah.
And when I walk in there, I get hugs from the staff. That's how awesome they are.
Yeah, so it's not about the product, it's about the service and the experience.
Exactly. But the service and the experience are sitting on a product that stands behind, we're here for the customer. Right? And so that's authenticity. So Honda makes it easier than anyone, in my opinion, and at least in the automotive industry. And it's not that they don't ever screw up, but when they do, they fix it. And so when you're, as a company, realize that and I'm gonna hate on McKinsey, even though this is not an example, it's the name that came to mind. When you hire McKinsey to come in to tell, and I defend McKinsey in a lot of rooms, they make really smart people. But when you ask McKinsey to come in and tell you what are the trends in marketing, and they come out and they tell you authenticity, and as a brand, you double down and say, we need to all our content, we're going to reshift our focus, and the voice of the company needs to be authenticity, and we care about our customer. But every conversation you have as an executive leadership team is about how much money we're making, or are we going to hit the bottom line, and not about, hey, what's our customer satisfaction score, or is there anywhere where a customer of ours is having trouble? If you don't spend energy and time in that, and you're just worried about how are we going to squeeze a little bit more money out of the people that are already our customers, programmatic is the most efficient way to get the customer to hate you.
There's our headline.
That's, yeah. Let's circle a little back. A while ago, you said something like some of the behemoths take smaller, innovative companies out of the market in order to not be outshone. What are some of these exciting tech or more interesting technologies that could potentially disrupt or fix programmatic without plugging too many names?
Programmatic specifically, I haven't talked to this guy in a long time. There was one company that I don't know if they got shelved or not. I didn't even know if they got acquired. But they were doing some. It was PK4 Media, and I don't know. I don't even know if they're still around. I probably should check on it. That's one from a exclusively programmatic perspective. From a
What did they do? What did they do differently? Better?
I don't know if they
Smarter?
I think they were rough and tough, and they were a small team, and they were just nerds, and so they didn't have a developed sales team that was out there trying to convince you why they were better. They just they tinkered, and so they talked about the strategy for programmatic war room style. You could sit down with them and say, hey, you could have a 2-hour conversation about marketing strategy that wasn't just, we'll buy our ads for this much, right? And so when the people running the programmatic company genuinely nerd out on consumer behavior, then you've got a good one. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
Makes
it all comes down to journey building. If you have a creative person that does journeys, or when you have an when you have a technology person, or you have a numbers person that's doing the creative aspect of it too, those companies outshine. And when I said the thing about companies shelving others, it wasn't exclusive to programmatic.
Then cast the net a little wider.
Yeah. And so the ones I've witnessed are much more on the front line of the consumer experience, where ticketing is notorious for this. Ticketing registration companies, the juggernauts are out there, right? StubHub, Ticketmaster, Paciola, and the big guy. And so some of those companies acquire small ticketing operators that have built cool technologies. And then you realize that they get not necessarily shelved in the way that they don't get to do anything anymore, but they're only doing the one thing that they were really good at back then. But if you had let that company run with not needing to be within the network, they would have gone from, we're the coolest way for a customer to register for your event in the festival world. And if you gave them $500,000 and let that team reconfigure how you did ticket sales in the stadium, everybody in the world would be happier.
Yeah, who knows where they could go if they were able to continue their own R&D.
Exactly. Right. It's the day they get purchased by, we'll use Ticketmaster as an example. Ticketmaster bought them and said, okay, we love what you're doing, but now you can only do it in festivals. You can't do it anywhere where there are venues. And so inadvertently, Ticketmaster may have done it because they wanted them to focus, right? Or because they were plugging a hole within their own ecosystem that they didn't necessarily have. And so now they bought the leader of the pack to plug that hole, and now the entire Ticketmaster universe is going to be better. Great, we'll give it to you that way. But why stifle that team's creativity who has just fixed the problem, instead of a private equity firm finding them and saying, invest in that, and just going, here's $10 million. We're not going to let you spend it all at once, but go after Ticketmaster's jugular or StubHub, right? And so those investors exist. What I find is it's very difficult for startup technologies to garner attention until after they've made it big, the first phase of making it big. And so there's a lot of cool technology out there today that is somewhere in this state of limbo between not being big enough for companies to acquire them, not being big enough for private equity firms to really look at them, and the teams that own them being reluctant to sell to the wrong person. And so I'd say there's probably 15 or 20 companies on my radar that I'm trying to bring together, do stuff with, etc., but without raising the flag of saying, hey, here we are. And again, that goes back to hiding in plain sight. Until it's big enough to walk into the ring and actually stand its ground, it's hard to talk about it.
Right.
Before we are getting into our usual famous last words, I'm interested in getting whether this perception I now gained is right. So what I seem to have heard is that programmatic advertisement can work well in two distinct scenarios. One is brand building or brand awareness, when you don't need to know Thomas for Thomas, but just want to achieve that Thomas knows about Gucci or whoever. And now that you finally mentioned the word journey, precisely within a journey, within context, when I'm obviously doing or trying to achieve something, where then the message should be highly targeted to Thomas.
Yes. I think that the latter is very powerful.
It is, yeah.
Because, and it's right, it's all the web of lies, right? It's Thomas bought something from me. Thomas came back and bought something from me again. Thomas bought something from me again. Who the hell is Thomas? Somebody on your team, like, why does programmatic work? Because once you identify who Thomas is and what he looks like, go find me more Thomases. And so we profile them, and now we have this persona that tells me, well, Thomas lives in this neighborhood. He drives this car. These are his friends, and I want more of them because I'm effective. Like, I know that I'm spent money there in advertisement gives me a return. And so the problem is, if you bought a pair of shoes from Picolinos, and then you bought a belt and you bought a wallet, Picolinos needs to send you the next thing is for a travel bag. I don't even know if Picolinos makes travel bags, but I love their shoes. And they say, Thomas is a great customer. Buy me more Thomases. To your point, serve them brand content. Don't try to sell them the belt. Right? Get them to engage with the brand. Get them to understand where you came from. Get them to take an interest and just recognize your brand, so that when they walk into the store, see a pair of Picolinos, they want to try them on. That's how journey mapping and personalization work together. But when you skip the part of afford the customer the luxury of a complete life cycle, and you try to sell them too early, it's the same thing that we see in business when the elevator pitch fails because it wasn't an elevator pitch.
Yeah.
And so it's timing and delivery.
Okay.
It's the right product to the right customer at the right time through the right channel.
So now
And
we are at the top of the hour.
we can have a whole nother conversation on
Yeah,
pricing.
well, it's
You're leaving a lot on the
pricing
table
is
here.
which we are
is
probably
my
starting
go-to.
in another hour.
I'll close with this. The biggest mistake companies make with pricing is looking at price as the input to the equation of how much money they want to make.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
From an economics perspective, price is the byproduct of the relationship between supply and demand. You need to understand your customer. That's your demand.
Yeah.
Then figure out how much you should make in order to serve that demand. And the price is just the derivative of all of that.
Yeah.
And so too many companies call me and say, Diego, how should we price our product? Let's start from the beginning. That's the last thing. When we're done with the exercise of understanding your customer, understanding your production capabilities, understanding nearshore, offshore, how you can make your company better, when your consumer experience is elite, the price will tell you itself.
Cool. Famous last words. Now, although we took a quite a long trajectory, actually, touching and deviating we took a long curve, a long way, touching and going away from programmatic advertising. Final last words from your end, or famous last words, famous last words. So is programmatic...
Marshall, can you hear Thomas?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm having trouble on my side. It's
well, then I hand over to Marshall. He knows the point.
If you can hear me, then
I can hear you just fine.
I'll give you a little. Here's an interesting question for you to chew on in our last minutes. Is programmatic advertisement a friend or a foe? And what makes it a friend? If it is.
I would say it's a friend. One, because I have a ton of friends that work in digital and I don't want this. Programmatic done right is a great tool, like any tool. It's just a tool. It's not the end all be all. And so as long as you have a marketing team that can understand what it's doing and that you're not spending money where you shouldn't be. And so that's not to say, like, programmatic in general as a subset is a friend. Is the team you're working with that you're buying programmatic from transparent enough to work with you so that your money's not being just thrown at things and that you can actually have a substantive conversation about your customer, your journey, your product, why it matters, who we're reaching, and you have a constant ebb and flow. But if you're as a digital advertiser, if you are just going to set and forget it, do the company a favor and let them hire someone else. I know too many great digital marketers that know the journey front to back, that work with the product development team, that are constantly on the, they never sleep. Bo Decker, amazing. There's a ton of them. Mike Dirks. I mean, the people from the digital world, and I'm not naming all of them. There's 10 people coming to mind at the same time. The people from the digital world that know programmatic far more than I do also know the consumer journey better than I did. They knew the product better than I did. Like, I was just there to help them make more money, but they did the magic. If you've got that, programmatic is a friend.
All right. Well, I think that's as good a place as any to end it. That is our CRMKonvo for the day. Fortunately, there's a lot left that we could talk about. So maybe we can continue this at another time. To Diego J. Prado, thank you very much for joining us and providing your time and your insight. It's been a great hour. Thank you to our audience for listening in. We always appreciate it. And when you want to rewatch this episode or see any of our others, you can find us on YouTube at CRMKonvos with a K.
Thank you, Marshall, and thank you, Thomas.
And there's a subscribe button, by the way.
Oh,
Very
yeah, you can do that too. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the things.
Yeah.
Tune in next week when we will be diving into the intersection of AI and ethics with our guest, Andreas Welsh. Hopefully you'll be able to join us for that. Until then, thanks again, and everyone be healthy and happy.
See you.
Cheers.